This is Jordan Edwards, and this is the Business Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. Good afternoon, Adelita Montero.
Great afternoon, Jordan. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you today. We were connected through Instagram, of course, and you have a very, very, very interesting background. I'd love to read your bio quick, if that's cool, and let the listeners and the watchers learn a little bit about who you are. I'm going to share my screen, too, to your website.
Sounds great.
All right.
Oh, wow.
We're going to get to this stuff. So I'll read this more brief bio. Adelita is a conscious entrepreneur, an international coach and speaker, and a 4-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. Congratulations. That's awesome. Adelita works with high-performing entrepreneurs, corporate leaders, and athletes who struggle with unresourceful emotional and mental states, causing them to fall short on reaching their goals. Adelita guides individuals and teams in developing a warrior champion mindset for maximizing results and creating more freedom and success. She provides the best hypnotherapy for anxiety, relationships, insomnia, and more treatment in Los Angeles, California. As a world-class athlete, Adelita teaches the proven techniques and tools in developing her own winning strategies for success on the mats and in life. Very cool. Pumped to talk to you. Tell me about yourself.
Well, I've been doing Jiu-Jitsu for a long time. Jiu-Jitsu is really the catalyst for my personal growth. I was in a unfulfilling, difficult relationship. My first marriage, I was married for 16 years. I had 2 kids. And I sort of recreate the trauma and the drama of my childhood, of my parent, and I recreated that to heal it, basically, and to grow. So when I found Jiu-Jitsu, I was able to be confident, and I started to learning to face my fears, and feeling strong and starting to win tournaments. So I was able to grow out of oh my God, I'm stuck in here in this relationship chokehold, and then I'm gonna break out of here, and I'm gonna I'm supposed to be happy. I'm not supposed to feel trapped and unfulfilled and not be able to grow. So that's what Jiu-Jitsu did for me. It was really the catalyst for my personal growth, for my journey in personal development, and then now I'm a therapist, and I'm starting to work with applied neuroscience and so forth.
Wow. Incredible background. Where were you born? Where are you from?
I'm from Brazil, São Paulo.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned Jiu-Jitsu here. I started Jiu-Jitsu when I was already 29 years old. So it's not something I'm Brazilian, but my Jiu-Jitsu is very much American. I started Jiu-Jitsu at Carlson Gracie team in Temecula, of all places. And Temecula, California. So I lived in Orange County for a long time. And then my ex-partner wanted to move to buy some properties in Temecula and investment properties, but we had to live in one of them to make it work. And it was a 2-hour commute to his work and to my school. I was going to Cal State Long Beach for business. So also
you have a business background too.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I dabble in so many things. It's
we'll touch on them. But so you said you had a little bit of trauma growing up in Brazil.
Yeah.
How did you deal with some of that trauma as a young person? Were you an athlete?
I didn't know that I had trauma. People that have trauma don't know that they have trauma for the most part, from what I'm seeing on my clinical practice. You just don't know what you don't know. You just kind of go about life just with this filter of trauma and trouble, and you just kind of keep attracting that which wants to heal. So it takes some personal growth, some growing, some consciousness growth for you to even realize what is going on. That, okay, I have trauma. Like, how do I deal with trauma?
Yeah.
So
That's
it's difficult. It's not
that's
an easy path.
that's it's a really interesting moment, and I've talked about it a lot on this podcast, and I wrote about it in my first book. But I call that moment of awakening the I'm the asshole moment. You know, it's like the moment of saying, I'm the maker of my madness. I'm the person that's responsible for all this. And maybe it was because of trauma or things that happened to me, but
Mhm.
it's my responsibility now to change those things and become the kind of person that you want to be. And I remember there's a picture of me reading a book by Tony Robbins called Money. You ever read that book?
I haven't read this one, but I have
Yeah.
many of his books.
Yeah. And I remember it was November 2014, and I was reading this book, and I said, it literally clicked in my head. And I was like, wait a second. You're the reason that you're getting in fights with your business partners, and you're at war with this one, and you're arguing with that one. And I said, oh my God. And so it's funny when you have that moment of realization. It helps set you up to find all the things that you wanted and all the success and the happiness. And it was so funny because I also had a bad relationship in college for a number of years. And then it ended after college. And I was so sad and I was so depressed. And every day I was driving to and from work, and I would just be marinating in my madness and, so upset. And I would be dreaming and daydreaming about all the things that she must be doing and how happy she was. And of course, none of that was even real. I was just making it up in my head.
Right.
And then I'd get to lunch and I'd say, everything will be okay by lunch. Everything will be okay by lunch. And then, of course, eat food, wait. And that's also around the time I was getting serious about jiu-jitsu. So it's, I think that these are universal truths, which is what my podcast is all about. My upcoming book, Business Jiu-Jitsu, is all about. It's discovering universal truths that we find in jiu-jitsu that help us become better people in business or in life.
Yes, the way you do one thing is how you do everything. So when you start improving jiu-jitsu, you can't help but your personal flaws or strengths or whatever. It's all going to come out in the mat. It's going to be very uh, apparent to everybody. And you start to pick up the patterns. It's like, okay, there's this pattern like in my life, and then there's this pattern in jiu-jitsu, and then I might owning up to, I'm going to pretend that I'm tapping. Am I really going to tap? You know what I mean? Are you taking responsibility for your mistakes?
Yeah.
So it all shows. And then if you can't see, you can't grow, right? So I think that jiu-jitsu also gives you the courage, which is very important for you to move up the scale of consciousness. I like the work of Dr. David Hawkins, Power versus Force, and Letting Go. Highly recommend that. I tell all my clients, buy Letting Go, but Power versus Force is the most famous book, Dr. David Hawkins.
Mm-hmm.
And he explains that, the level of courage is when you break through the lower levels of negative emotions of fear, anger, apathy, and all those kinds of emotions, and so that you can rise up to like courage, willingness, eventually love and enlightenment. So it's a process of growing, but without the courage to face yourself, basically, to face your flaws, to admit that we carry a lot of our parental programming. It's like you have to sort it out. Like now, okay, you might have had trauma from childhood, which I have had, or from relationships, which makes it even worse. But then now you're a grown up. Now in this present moment, what can you do now with what you have to heal that and to take responsibility for your emotions, for your thoughts, for your
That's a nicer way of saying what I said.
No, totally. I think this is so important. This is like if you don't have this, you don't have anything. You're in a victim mindset, right? I'm also writing a book, and books are awesome. Everybody should write a book. And
Books are awesome. I think that they're a cheat code for life. I never liked reading growing up. I think that sometimes when you tell people who don't read that how powerful it is, that they think it's pretentious, they don't understand. But what I found so amazing about books is that all of these incredibly successful people have left you all of the breadcrumbs, all the breadcrumbs, leaders, philosophers, generals, presidents, all of these successful people, actors, producers, and they all have something to teach. And what you find out when you crack these pages is like I said, these universal truths, these modes of operating that help you get what you want in life: happiness, success, relationship, good relationships. And so when I didn't have the answers, when I was building my companies in my late 20s, and I had exhausted all of my natural talent, the only place I had left to turn was books. And I started finding all the answers, and I was like, oh my God, this is so incredible. And so instead of applying my own thoughts and filters, I said, what would Abraham Lincoln do in this situation? What would General Patton do in this situation? What would Tony Robbins do in this situation? And then what happened over the years and years and years of reading, I started to develop my own ways of thinking, more like them than my standard way of thinking when I was younger. And I think that's very similar to jiu-jitsu. Like you said it perfectly, and I say that all the time. You don't even know what you don't know at the beginning. And you start doing jiu-jitsu as a white belt, and as you get better and better and better, you're collecting technique, and all of a sudden you start to develop your own game. And that's like book. I've often equated mat time to reading time. The mat time in jiu-jitsu is like reading time in business. It's so critical if you want to get better.
Absolutely, yeah. You start to see your patterns, right, on your game, and how frustrating you can get, or how what's your work ethic, and all those kinds of things. This is so it's a great way to face your fears and humility, right? Like jiu-jitsu teaches so much humility. Like if you don't have humility, if you have a very big ego, I don't think anybody can survive. Like you have to have some malleability.
Yes.
Because you're gonna get tapped. I mean, in the beginning, like in the first 3 months, I think it's just you just survive it.
Yeah.
just stay calm. It's hard for them to stay calm, right? Like it feels like fight or flight, right? The people are gonna kill me, right? And then the white belts are really tense, and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm like, calm down. I'm not gonna kill you, I promise."
Yeah. Well, and if you've been around jiu-jitsu long enough, then you've probably experienced that at all the belt levels, because you've unfortunately gotten injured or something took you off the mat and you have to go back. And then all of a sudden, people that you were easily beating before have caught up a little bit. And now that's the same feeling all over again. Oh my God, it's that feeling of drowning. And so it's a big circle. That jiu-jitsu is a big circle for the ego. And that's like my logo, Business Jiu-Jitsu. It's right in the corner or here up by your head of the Enso. It's a rebirth and the beginning. And when you get to the end, you restart at the beginning. So tell me a little bit about your career, because you have done a lot. You've been a stunt person.
I did a little bit,
hypnotherapist, hypno stage actor. You have a really diverse background. Where did it start?
Well, let's see. I always started in Brazil. I was a little girl, and I've always had this need to fill up my schedule. Like I was doing English lessons. I would go after school to a language school twice a week. So I started to learn English, and it's almost like I already knew, like I was being prepared to come here. Like I had no idea. I didn't know anybody that lived in foreign places or anything like that. So out of my, circle of knowledge, and but still I was learning that. I did that from the time I was 12 to the time I was 16. So I had some level of competency, but I thought I did until I got to here. And then I realized I'm still learning. This is like 21 years later. And it's funny that, not every immigrant also learn. Like I have to make a real effort, right, to continue to learn. Like I had kids, so I also see them grow up through school, so that helps.
Yeah.
So yeah, English has helped me a lot. And then I also did some drama classes. In Brazil, we call theater drama classes. Like you're learning how to do drama, to be dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really fun. I think that when you have a lot of trauma, one of the research-based, evidence-based ways to treat trauma, it turns out that is through theater. It is somatic. It is through movement. It is through jujitsu. It is martial arts. It's yoga. It's capoeira. So like there is this super expert, 40-year expert in the field of trauma healing, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. He wrote "The Body Keeps the Score." It's like the Bible of trauma, right? He wrote that back in 2014, kind of.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's been around for a long time, and he's really big on, alternative ways, because he was involved. He was a psychiatrist. He was a medical doctor. He was involved in medication studies, like for depression and Prozac and Zoloft and all these kinds of things. And what he found out, it's not an opinion. He found out that it didn't work. It's not working. The common ways of healing trauma, which I had a lot growing up, the conventional ways, which is talk therapy, blah, blah, blah. Let me talk you to, just relax, relax. It's just like telling the white belt to relax. You know what I mean? They just came in and everybody's trying to kill him. Just relax into it. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
And meds necessarily not very useful for hard to treat cases. For most cases, it's not like, hey, here, take a pill, like all your problems go away. So sometimes we kind of wish for that because, it would have been great if it worked, but it just doesn't. Right. And it's not an opinion. So Dr. Bessel van der Kolk goes through all these processes that I just found out recently, because I'm in grad school for clinical psychology my last year, and learned that all the things that I was kind of intuitively doing was the process of my own healing. So the theater, the somatic work, and then eventually I got into capoeira. That was my first martial art.
In Brazil?
Yeah, in Brazil. So I was like 12 years old. I did a few years. And I loved it. The martial arts was already in me, right? So it's that kind of helped me. I got into skateboarding after that. And there's this whole skateboarding life in Brazil. And I would compete in skateboarding. And then I would travel, compete. That's why I came to the US, because
For skateboarding.
For skateboarding, I came as an athlete to compete in like different, women's tournaments and things like that. So I did some of that. In Brazil, I was like top 3, and I was top 1 like in 1999 or something. I don't know, 2000. And I was reigning in Brazil. But when I get here, it's like, oh my God, there's Elissa Stimmer and like all these girls that are just like, they're just doing crooked grinds, like one truck down the like 20 stair like rails.
Yeah.
With one truck grinding that down, like, no big deal. And then keep flipping off of it. It's like, oh my God, I'm just a little bit out of my league. So I try, I competed. I, would like get 8th place, 10th place. And it's just like the level just got so insane, right? Yeah. Like the girls that came. So I was with the first few girls that first came from Brazil to compete. And then now there's like a whole wave of the girls that came after us, right? Like Leticia Buffoni from Brazil. She's sponsored by Red Bull. And she did this crazy like Red Bull trick that she grinded a rail and then jumped from a helicopter after that.
Oh, wow. That's not where I thought you were going.
Yeah, and she won so many X Games. So she was like 13 years old when she first came. And
oh, wow.
Kind of like me and the group of my other girlfriends, like we sort of like saw her growing up and she kind of followed our steps. And then now she's like, she competed in Olympics, kind of thing in Tokyo. So women's skateboarding was like a big thing. I was the only girl skater in my hometown, and I've always been kind of counterculture. I don't know where I got that. Like I had a boyfriend that used to skateboard, said, and then he's like, I'm like, let me try. He's like, no, you're never gonna do it. I'm like, you watch me. And then
I feel like you have a measure of athleticism that like brings you to all these different
yeah,
disciplines, whether it's jujitsu or capoeira or skateboarding.
yeah.
Um, and it probably, you're able to ride that wave of athleticism. And it's a common theme, I think.
I don't know where it comes from because my family, right? That's what I speak about and I write on my book. If you look at my family, like they're like, I'm so different, right? I feel like I'm from another planet. Like both of my parents, like they smoked a pack of cigarettes a day. Like my dad drank. My mom had epilepsy when I was born. She
Wow.
started having that. I think the hormones, whatever, triggered this kind of thing. So she had to take like meds for that,
Mm.
epileptic seizures. And she was, they both were cops. So I have the kind, there's probably some cop genetics in me. And so she struggled. They both worked full time. So I'm like with my grandmother took care of me, and then some nanny, cleaning lady. Like the nanny is also the cleaning lady in Brazil. So a nanny, cleaning lady, she's cleaning. She's not really a nanny. And I just kind of grew up like that. Both parents working. It's tough. It's tough. It's a kind of a newer thing in our society, and it's really hard for the kid needs the attention. So I had both parents working. My dad drank. He was a functional alcoholic. You never saw him like hammered, but now I know looking back, he drank every day. Like he's
Mm.
coping with life drinking.
Yeah.
Period. He passed away 5 years ago, so
Mm.
I'm not even gonna be mad that I'm saying this.
Yeah.
And then my mom is struggle, health struggle. You have kids, you don't know what's gonna happen. You have kids, right? Like
Yes, I
it's a
do.
huge thing for women to give birth. It's scary. Like anything can happen.
Sure. Well, you can only imagine what they potentially could have achieved had they not, found cigarettes and booze and however they were coping with the things in their life at that time. They didn't know, at that time it was a different time.
Different time. And that was the best that they were doing the best they could with what they had. You know what I mean? And I went through this whole thing called the Hoffman process with the personal development growth week-long process in Northern California
Mhm.
that you get in there and you turn in your cell phone and then you just dive deep on like the pattern, like the negative patterns from your parental programming, and you just like you do so much work, like psychological work, kind of like, and that's how I found out about NLP. That's how people start to tell me, wow, maybe you should be doing this kind of work. And it's like big like group therapy and just different things, and learning about self-awareness and learning all about those things. It was like my very first baby steps in this world.
Can
And
you just tell, like, give a little beginner explanation about NLP?
NLP,
Yeah,
neuro
neuro-linguistic programming, right?
programming. Yeah, I mean Tony Robbins, right? He created the field. He created the
Mhm.
field of neurolinguistic programming. It's funny because in grad school, and I have all these students, friends and therapy, soon to be therapists. Nobody knows about NLP. So, like, I've been a coach and a hypnotherapist for 5 years, and I had all this life experience. So, the kids in grad school right now, like, they're young. They haven't been married and divorced and this and that, and they don't have the tools and the experience that I've had coaching, people and hypnotizing people for 5 years on their negative beliefs. So, I think that's what it is. Like, neurolinguistic programming is programming your your psychology, your neurology, your physicality affects your neurology, right? The words that we say, how that is like you're listening to the words that you're saying, and even when you're not saying anything, the thoughts that you're thinking, your beliefs, right? And how those negative beliefs, limiting beliefs, are affecting everything. Like you can see that in jiu-jitsu. Like some people are like, oh, I can't this and that, sign up for this tournament, or I'm so scared, like, and then you start to see the pattern of their thinking, and it's so negative, like where it's not where did you learn that, where's that coming from? So you have to kind of have like a meta awareness of your own processes, and to kind of remove yourself from inside the picture. Like Les Brown says, you can't see clearly, you can't see what's going on in the picture if you're inside the picture, you know you have
Absolutely.
to jump out and create some space so you can have some, it's almost not dissociation, but just create some space so that you
Yeah.
can watch your life like it's a movie. Don't get so fully invested on the drama of even the highs and the lows,
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So just
Tony Robbins says where focus goes, energy flows. That was like one of the things he had in the book that was so powerful to me. It was one of
Mhm,
those moments where it just kind of the light bulb switched. And that was when I met my wife in
mhm.
2015. We connected on that. And I used to say at that time, I always used to be like, I'm a bottomless pit of hunger. I'm a bottomless pit of hunger. And she'd be like, why do you say that? And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, well, if you just say that you're not hungry, you're not going to be so hungry. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. I'm just going to stop saying that. And I
Mhm,
just stopped saying it. If there's one thing I'm pretty good at, is like if somebody gives me a good tip, I'm
mhm.
like, oh, I like that tip. Let's do that. And so I just stopped saying I'm a bottomless pit of hunger. And then all of a sudden I wasn't a bottomless pit of hunger anymore. Just like that. Like in one day. I remember where I was. I was in my parents' beach house in the bathroom. I could like, I know exactly where I was standing. She said it to me. She's like, why do you say that? It's like, I don't know why I say that.
But
So
yeah, where
I
we
really connect with what you're saying, and I believe it with all my heart. And I just, as many people that could hear it as possible, whatever you tell yourself, that's what you are. If you
that's
say, if
yes.
they, please take it away. You're an expert.
No, I just love this conversation, because it just kind of reminds me that that's self hypnosis,
Mm,
right?
makes a lot of sense. I don't know much about hypnosis, but I do know that your thoughts color your life, and that's what I was describing before. Is I was in my mid-20s and I was driving every day to work, and I
Mm.
was making up these stories in my head. And then I read this book by Tony Robbins, and I just and then I was listening to books on tape every day, coming back and forth from New York City to my office in Long Island. And instead of thinking about my thoughts, I was listening to all of these leaders and amazing people for years. Even till this day, I still do it all the time. And so instead of me just making up stories in my head or thinking about it, even if my life was good, even if I was thinking about something that's great, I just changed my thinking from what I was thinking to what all these other people. And then what was so interesting about all these great books, especially biographies, was the incredible trials and tribulations that these people went through. And you just can't even imagine, what President Grant went through after the
Mhm.
Civil War during Reconstruction period. I mean, those are problems. It put all my problems into perspective when I was learning about these amazing people and all the decisions that they had to make. And it made the decisions that I had to make seem not so big, even though they're big in my own life. But it always put it into perspective, thinking about, like JFK during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Like, that's stress, not me opening another women's clothing store or buying another building. Like, my average day to day. Those are stressful situations in my life for growing my business. But whenever I think about it through those lenses, I always feel a little bit better.
Yeah, I think everybody has a different type of cross to carry, like responsibilities and things that they, some heavier than others, but it
Yeah.
does help to uh, learn from others and to study and to, right, like reach
Yeah.
out, like so that you don't feel like you're alone, right? I think volunteering and being of service to people
Oh
is
yeah.
a really great way to get out of your own head, to get out of your own, oh, poor me and my victim and my problems are so unique. No, they're not. Okay.
It's so true.
Like there's so many people with trauma and childhood traumas. Like everybody's traumatized. There are so
Everybody
many
has trauma.
people that have been like sexually assaulted, molested. That you did they? you couldn't even know. Maybe their family don't know.
Yeah.
Or, different kinds of trauma, like medical trauma, family trauma. It's just everywhere. And so what I like to think in terms of like when you're on the mat in jujitsu, that when somebody steps on the mat, they're gonna roll with you. Don't just crush and kill that person. Like, you know what I mean? You don't know what it took for them to be there. Maybe they're trying to go do their therapy, and now you're gonna roll with them, and you're gonna go beat the heck out of them. You know what I mean? It's more traumatizing. Like, just try to think in terms of compassion, like other people. Compassionate choking.
Yeah. It's true.
But you know
It's
what I
true.
mean? You don't need to like devastate somebody, especially okay, if you have to kind of think in terms, okay, I'm a higher bell or I'm stronger or whatever. Like, if I'm a man rolling with a woman, like, am I gonna crush that woman? Like maybe that woman has been, assaulted on the street and she's trying to learn some self-defense, and
Yeah.
then this big blue belt is gonna come and just like she's gonna quit. So it's really hard for
Absolutely.
me to
And you
train.
have to be a good teammate. One of my teammates is I think she's now the former, but she was the 3-time defending Invicta world champion at the women's, Tanisha Tennant. And so we train together all the time. I'm
Wow.
6'2", 220 pounds. She's
Oh.
significantly smaller than me. She's a purple belt. She's an extremely good purple belt. She's like a New York purple belt, which like sometimes it could be a little, she could be like a brown belt in many places, in my opinion.
Right.
But if I asserted my dominance on her and just crushed her in side control, we could never train together. She would just go get different training partners. Her goal in life is to be the Invicta women's world champion, not the heavyweight men's championship. And so one of the things I often tell my employees is you're not competing with anybody but yourself. You have to
Mhm.
achieve your goals. You're not trying to beat somebody else. You're not trying to, it doesn't matter what the store next to you is doing or what the landlord down the block is doing. You have to try to win your day. And so, like, I'm not competing with Chanel. Of course they sell clothes, but they're in a totally different league than me. And so having great training partners is about that. You are not trying to beat your training partners. You're trying to become a better jujitsu practitioner. And
Hmm.
becoming a better jujitsu practitioner means training with all different types of people. And sometimes you need, in my case, that 300-pound, 6'7" guy to sit on top of you so that I could learn how to work out of those situations. And I need him to, make me extremely uncomfortable. But other times I need to train with a teenage white belt, and I just need to flow with them and use zero strength. And it teaches you about all the different ebbs and flows of life and all the different things you're going to encounter in business. Because if you constantly avoid the uncomfortable, well, then all of a sudden COVID comes around and the government forces you to shut down your stores and furlough 200 employees, and you're not equipped to deal with it because you're like, you don't have the answers to deal with those questions because you haven't been putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. And so if you alienate training partners and you beat them up, as you're saying, then you're not going to have any training partners. And that is a curse that many, many jiu-jitsu practitioners have had to try to figure out. Why doesn't anybody want to train with me?
I know it's part of the learning process. So I hope that this can, people can listen to this and like, contemplate that's their role in like, what am I trying to do? Like, am I here to like, right, compete and beat up on people all the time? Like, sign up for a tournament, right? Go at it, But then like when you're with your teammates, try to learn. There are some people that like to go hard, and then you kind of have to adjust. You know what I mean? You don't roll the same way with everybody. So he has some finesse. You have to kind of refine, right? I'm rolling with the kid, I'm rolling with the woman, I'm rolling with the guy, I'm rolling with the black belt. So it's all different ways of rolling. And isn't that true with life, right? There's
Absolutely.
all these different situations, and sometimes you have to adapt, right?
When I was in college, I was going to go on, well, I didn't even want to go on spring break. And my roommate and best friend at the time convinced me to go on spring break. And so I paid for it. And the night before I was supposed to leave, he called me and said, I don't want to fly. I'm scared. I don't want to go on spring break. And he left me. And I had nobody to go with. And I called my dad. I said, F him. I'm never speaking to him again. And my dad said, Go on spring break. You're going to meet 100 people. I'm sure you're going to know people there. You're going to have a great time. And he said, I'm going to tell you something right now. If you try to cut out every person in your life that disappoints you, then you're going to have no friends, because everybody's going to disappoint you at some point. He said, everybody comes into your life for a different reason, and you can be friends with them just because they do things wrong by you. And that guy is still one of my best friends to this day. As a matter of fact, I have a business call with him in about 30 minutes.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
you know, it's about you. It's about how you respond, how you react to these situations that happen in your life. I did go on that spring break, and I did have a great time. And, you know, I didn't need that guy. And, you know, you have to empathize and think about what he was going through at the time. Turns out he was going through a lot of personal problems and a lot of family problems that I didn't know about. You know, I didn't know about until later on. And I'm not saying it is, but his parents were just about getting divorced. And so he was in a crisis, and he hadn't yet shared that with me. And so I could have easily cut him out of my life and lost a best friend, but I elected to keep him in my life. And I always shout out my dad for that, Glenn, because I have used that principle over and over and over and over again, which is just because someone's doing something at you, it's not about you, you know? And in business, I often say, like, or I think it's from Navy SEAL Jocko Willing, it's all on you, but it's not all about you. You know, like, it's your job to get the job done, but it's not about you. You know, these things aren't happening to you. They're happening. And you just have to, like,
For you.
Yeah, for you. Perfectly said.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a great dad. Right?
I do have a great dad. He's still here. He's my business partner in many businesses, and he's an amazing mentor. We wrote my first book together. This Is It. And we've had a great working relationship, although not easy. You know, not easy. As a son, you have to learn how to be a great business partner. You have to learn how to be a great family member, and you have to learn how to put your ego in check and absorb the knowledge and the lessons that are being taught to you, even when you want to take things in a different direction. And you have to recognize that your parents are just people, you know, and they have emotions and they have feelings, and you can't be a spoiled brat all the time. And so, and then another really difficult part about working with family is that they're always going to see you as your base self. You could do all the work in the world. You could do all the jujitsu training. You could take classes and get master's degrees and go to prestigious schools, and they're still going to see you as a little baby. And they know exactly what to say to snap you back to 12-year-old Jordan. You know, they would say they know exactly what to say to push your buttons. And so they see through it's kind of like doing jujitsu in the sense, like, you can't hide on the mat. And so they just know exactly. So if you want to be successful, you have to have recognition of all that. And you have to take the lessons of jiu-jitsu, which have been so helpful for me, and saying, you know, sometimes you're your parents' mirror. Sometimes when they say hurtful things to you, they're not saying it to you. They're being critical of themselves. And so learning how to absorb that and be of service to them, like you said, is a superpower that I think jiu-jitsu is very, very, very good teacher in that regard.
Amazing. So tell me a little bit about now I'm interviewing you.
Okay.
About this book of yours. What was the process of that? I watched a little bit of your documentary. It was very interesting. And is that, can you explain a little bit of?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for watching the documentary, and shout out to Will Harris, who's a podcast guest, and he's the #1 mixed martial arts documentarian in the world. Does Khabib and Usman and everybody. I mean, Anatomy of a Fighter, go check out his channel. It is the best mixed martial arts by far and away. He is on the ground with these fighters in their camps right now as we speak, and he's doing, like, the behind the scenes footage. You know, it's just so good. So anyway, shout out Will. I love that guy. The process of my book was this. In 2008, I was beginning to work for my father. I had graduated from college earlier that year, right before the global recession. And I was working for another company, and I very quickly lost my job, as did many of my friends who worked in banking in the New York area and real estate. And so they were really scary times. You know, 2008 was extremely scary to be in business. And my dad began writing a blog, glennedwards.wordpress.com.
Right.
Started writing about hope, optimism. He started saying, I've been through recessions before, things are going to get better. And he wrote it, and it connected with a lot of my friends. He was getting hundreds of views and comments. It was like a little cottage blog. Well, the world got better. All my friends went back to work, and the blog just lay dormant. At some point, he stopped writing it. And then a number of years later, so that was around, 08, 09. So a number of years later, maybe around 15, 16, I rediscovered the blog and I started reading it. And at that point, if I had looked back and I said, how much did my dad write? I would have thought maybe he wrote 20 blog posts. He had written every day for like almost 3 years. There were hundreds of blog posts, and I couldn't believe what he had written. And as I mentioned to you, I had in that time become a reader. At the time he wrote it, I wasn't a reader. And what I recognized about what my dad was writing was so much of his message was so similar to the message of all the people that I had respected and admired so much. And I had a new appreciation for the lessons that my dad had been trying to impart on me in my early 20s and before. So I printed out the blog and I made it into a coffee table book for him. And I presented it to him and I said, Dad, you have to write a book. And he was like, I have no interest in writing a book. Thanks, but I have enough on my plate. And I don't take no for an answer easily. So I said, you're writing a book? He said, I'm not writing a book. So I went out and I found a company, which at the time was called Book in a Box, and today is called Scribe. And they're a full service writing and publishing company, whereas they will take your ideas and you work with a publishing team and a scribe, and they will take you through the entire process. And I have said at the time they were a very, very young company, but they had that magic. They were a special company. They knew and so they produced this book. I was involved in every step of the process, and he came out with his first book, Coming Into Your Own. I'll link to it here if anybody's interested. And the day that he was done and the book was published and we got it in our hands, I'm just going to grab it right here. It's in front of me.
Great. Yes, please.
So yeah, here's the book, Coming Into Your Own. And when we held this book, he looked at me and he said, that was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, jotting down all of the stories and core values and memories from his career. And he said, all of the generations of our family are going to be able to go back and look at this. And the day that he was done, he said, you and me are going to write a book together. And at that point, we had been working together for about 10 years. And so I had 10 years of track record in my career and all of the stories and core values that were formative in my life. And we worked with Scribe to write this book, which is called This Is It.
This is it. What a great name.
And it was, all of the early stories, a lot of failures, a lot of my business failures in here, and hard lessons won, and then also the failures that lead to success. And so there was a lot of that in this book, which we love so much. And so we co-authored this together. And then when this book was over, I knew in my heart I already had business jiu-jitsu in mind, and I said I have to write a book for how jiu-jitsu has impacted my life. And I'm editing the manuscript right now. I've been working on it for 2.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and so business jiu-jitsu will be coming to life in the next few months, God willing. And I started this podcast to do research for it, and that's how the podcast started.
Amazing. Okay, now what is the process that you're using to publish? Are you using Scribe or what are you using now?
So Scribe is a full service, and I'm so happy to talk about them. I've talked about them a lot on this book. I give it out to lots of different authors. They are a full service company. They will take you from idea to getting your book published, and they do walk you through the entire process from start to finish. So creating the outline, working on the chapter structures, getting the stories going, writing out the chapters, editing the book, putting the book together, doing the cover, marketing the book. I mean, they will do from day one until, the book is out there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm in the process of doing that. My book is more than halfway done, and I'm in the process of trying to figure it out now, like which publishing company and where I'm gonna go. So
well, I give them a big endorsement if you want to be connected, or if anybody wants to be connected with them, I would be happy to do it. and they are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And they have an amazing CEO. They're a mission-driven company, and they just first class all the way. And what's so interesting is, so my exact team. Are you a fan of David Goggins?
Yes.
So I'm
Yeah,
reading
you know
David
what?
Goggins.
There's an
This is his team.
interesting edge of his, but sure, like
So I'm reading his first
recovery.
book, Can't Hurt Me, and I am devouring this book. And when a book is so good, you get to the extreme last page, and I'm talking about, this last page, the acknowledgments. And
Yeah.
I'm reading the acknowledgments, and he starts thanking my team. And I called them up and I said, how could you not tell me that you were working on this book? We were sworn to secrecy. We couldn't tell you at the time, but now that it's public, they were able to say it. And so I was just filled with so much gratitude, because I first of all, I admire him. Completely imperfect person, and he's wild, but I respect him, and he's incredibly motivational, and his book was just amazing. So anywho, yeah, Scribe Media, Lion Crest Publishing is the name of their publishing house.
Yeah, so there's something about like when you have a business and you can put your knowledge into a book, into a course. Like we see this all the time in NLP and coaching and things like that. It really does, like you did with your dad. Like you put the information into a format so that people can learn from, and just like we learn from other great minds, now we put all condensed of our experience into a book in a summarized way, in a way that people can dissect and apply in their own life, right? So I think that it's really remarkable that you can it's a tool to grow your business, right? And
sure. Yeah, there's many reasons to do it, and even just to leave behind a little piece of you for family or employees, friends. And it's just, once the words go down on paper, it's like they live. You can live a little bit longer. It's a beautiful thing.
It's like so cathartic too, because as you writing it, you are reliving and you rearrange and you kind of like reconfiguring those memories, and you even learning the lessons in a deeper way.
Yes.
And then now you're providing that knowledge to the world in a way that when people benefit from it, I feel like there's like a great healing of your own. There's a great learning of your own. You kind of expand your own capacity to learn more and grow more, right? Because you just a give and take, right? So it's really remarkable.
Beautiful.
So,
Well, tell me what you're working on right now, so we can spread the word. I'm going to share your website while you're talking about it.
yeah, I'm working on my book. So my book should be ready by early next year. I am I'm working in neurofeedback and applied neuroscience around the area of neurofeedback training. So there's this technology that you can put electrodes in your brain and have your brain scanned through QEEG, and you can see and manipulate your brain waves.
Wow.
So people that are stuck in beta wave or they're stuck in theta, you can actually manipulate the brain waves so you can achieve more, not only for high performance, but people that have maybe focus problems, executive functioning.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good for, what do I use for? I use for trauma, like trauma healing. It can heal. It can target like your amygdala, like certain areas of your brain, depending where you place the electrode, depending on the protocol, and to calm down a hyperactive fight or flight amygdala. So it's so remarkable. The technology has grown a lot.
Is that what we're looking at here on the screen?
Oh, this is my friend Tony Flo. He's like one of my sponsors.
Yeah.
Well, he worked with Kat Zingano
Uh-huh.
on her knee.
Ah.
And she just won recently, and he was just there right before her fight. Like he's like staying at my house. He lives in Ireland,
Oh,
And
wow.
he has this $40,000 machine from
Yeah.
John Thorpe in San Diego, and he's
Yes.
the second like greatest um, trainer, like practitioner of this technology called Equiscope.
Okay.
So he's working on my shoulder yesterday, worked on my
Very
friend,
nice.
took my friend to go to jujitsu with me. She hurt her knee and
Yes.
had shoulder problems. So it's a microcurrent
Wow.
technology that heals like deeply and kind of recharges, and he explains. I'm like, it's so fascinating. I'm like, everybody needs, people don't know about this technology.
Yeah.
You
My
know?
wife is a foot and ankle surgeon, and I don't know if it's the same
Yeah.
technology, but it looks very similar. She does some kind of shock wave.
Hmm.
They use it for all different types of things. But I have to find out. I'll send it over to you by email when I figure that out.
Yeah, connect her
Yeah.
with Tony because
Yeah.
they can he can share what he does. He's so like heart based, right?
Yeah.
Like he works with a lot of MMA fighters and professionals. So he helps me out every time I get a little tweak. And then if he's around, if he's in town, he lives in Ireland. He's trying to move back. He's from LA.
Oh, wow.
He's just up and down. They work with horses and they help like he's going to Oklahoma work on horses.
Wow.
And if you work on a horse, it's gonna work on me. So
Well, it's just so wonderful learning about you, and I welcome you to come back anytime on the podcast. I'm dying to hear about your book when it's live, so you better get in touch so that we can talk about that when it launches. But for now, people can find you at Adelita Live, Adelita Live on Instagram. Your website is AdelitaMonteroLive.com, and really, really interesting getting to know you, and congratulations on all of your success and continued learning. And please do stay in touch and let me know if I could be of service to you.
yeah, don't forget. I look forward to seeing about your book coming up.
Fantastic. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank
Well, you have a great day, and I'll talk to you
you.
soon.
Talk to you soon.